I didn't realize I was lonely for a long time. Not the kind of lonely people usually talk about. I had friends. I could hold conversations. I laughed at the right moments. I showed up to social events. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. But there was always this strange feeling that everyone around me had received instructions for relationships that I somehow missed. Everyone seemed to understand attraction. I didn't. At least not the way they did. People would ask me who I liked. And I never had an answer. Not because nobody was attractive, but because attraction felt like a language I couldn't speak yet. My friends would develop crushes on strangers. They'd see someone for 30 seconds and immediately know they were interested. Meanwhile, I could spend months talking to someone and still not know how I felt. At first, I thought something was wrong with me. Honestly, I thought I was broken. Because when everyone around you experiences something naturally, and you don't, the first thing you question is yourself. Not the world. Yourself. That's what I did. For years, I became an expert at pretending I understood conversations about attraction. When people talked about celebrity crushes, I'd nod. When people showed me photos and asked if someone was hot, I'd give an answer. When friends described instant chemistry, I'd pretend I related. But deep down, I felt like an outsider listening to a conversation everyone else understood. That feeling stayed with me longer than I like to admit. And over time, it became exhausting. Because pretending to understand something is one thing. Pretending for years is something else entirely. You start feeling disconnected from people even when you're surrounded by them. You start wondering if they'll ever understand what's happening inside your head. You start wondering if you even understand it yourself. The hardest part wasn't being different. The hardest part was not having words for it. Because when you can't explain your experience, you start creating explanations. Painful ones. I told myself I was emotionally unavailable. I told myself I was afraid of intimacy. I told myself I had commitment issues. I told myself I was confused. I told myself almost everything except the truth. Because the truth never occurred to me. The truth was that attraction simply worked differently for me. But before I understood that, every relationship felt like a test I was failing. Especially dating. Dating felt impossible. People wanted answers I didn't have. Do you like me? Do you feel chemistry? Can you see this going somewhere? And all I could honestly say was, I don't know yet. Not because I wasn't interested. Because I wasn't finished getting to know them. But that's not how modern dating works anymore. People expect certainty almost immediately. One date, maybe two. Then they want clarity. And I understand why. Nobody wants to waste time. But when your attraction develops through emotional connection, speed becomes your enemy. Because your feelings need something that modern dating rarely allows. Time. That's where the loneliness became unbearable. Not when I was alone. When I was trying to connect. I remember sitting across from people I genuinely liked. People I wanted to know better. People I felt safe around. And feeling pressure to produce emotions faster than they naturally arrived. It felt like trying to force a flower to bloom by pulling on its petals. The harder I tried, the more disconnected I felt. And eventually, I started wondering if everyone else was right. Maybe I was too complicated. Maybe I was too slow. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe I was impossible to love. That thought does something to a person. Quietly. Over time. It makes you start editing yourself. You stop explaining how you feel. You stop being honest about your uncertainty. You start giving people the answers they want instead of the answers that are true. Not because you're trying to deceive them, because you're tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of watching confusion appear on people's faces whenever you try to describe your experience. And then social media made everything worse. Because everywhere I looked, attraction seemed instant. People were falling in love overnight. Finding soulmates in direct messages. Talking about chemistry after a few conversations. Everywhere I turned, people seemed to be moving emotionally at a speed I couldn't keep up with. And the more I watched, the more isolated I felt. Not because I wanted what they had. Because I wanted to understand why I didn't. That's a different kind of loneliness. The loneliness of feeling out of sync with the world. The loneliness of wondering whether you're experiencing life incorrectly. The loneliness of constantly comparing your internal reality to everyone else's highlight reel. Eventually, I started noticing something. The people around me weren't necessarily connecting more deeply. They were connecting more quickly. And those aren't the same thing. That realization changed everything. Because for years I thought speed and depth were connected. I thought if something was real, it should happen fast. If attraction was genuine, it should appear instantly. If connection mattered, it should be obvious. But my life kept showing me something different. The strongest feelings I ever developed weren't immediate. They grew slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, through conversations, through trust, through emotional safety, through being understood. And once I noticed that pattern, I couldn't unsee it. I realized I wasn't struggling to feel attraction. I was struggling to feel attraction without connection. Those are completely different things. And suddenly so many years of confusion started making sense. The relationships that felt forced. The dates that felt empty. The pressure I constantly felt to know before knowing. To feel before feeling. To decide before understanding. I wasn't broken. I was simply trying to operate inside a system that wasn't built for how I experience connection. That realization brought relief. But it also brought grief. Because I started seeing how much energy I'd spent trying to become someone else. How many times I'd questioned myself. How many nights I'd wondered what was wrong with me. How many versions of myself I'd edited to appear more normal. That's the part nobody talks about. The grief. The grief of realizing you spent years fighting yourself for no reason. The grief of realizing your loneliness wasn't created by who you are. It was created by constantly measuring yourself against people who experience attraction differently. And maybe that's why so many demisexual people feel invisible. Not because nobody sees them, because nobody sees the struggle. Nobody sees the self-doubt. Nobody sees the comparisons. Nobody sees the years spent wondering why relationships feel so different. They only see the surface. But beneath that surface is often someone carrying questions they've been asking themselves for years. Questions they rarely say out loud. Will anyone understand me? Will anyone be patient enough? Will anyone stay long enough for attraction to have room to grow? Will I always feel this different? I've asked myself all of those questions. More than once. Maybe you have too. And if you have, then you know the loneliness I'm talking about. The hidden loneliness. The kind that exists even when your life looks fine from the outside. The kind that follows you into conversations. Into relationships. Into dating apps. Into moments where everyone else seems certain while you're still discovering how you feel. But here's what I've learned. The problem was never that I experienced connection differently. The problem was believing different meant wrong. It doesn't. Some people feel attraction first and build connection later. Others build connection first and discover attraction afterward. Neither path is broken. Neither path is less real. Neither path is less human. And maybe the most healing realization I've ever had was this. I wasn't looking for more attention. I wasn't looking for more validation. I wasn't even looking for more attraction. I was looking for understanding. Because understanding creates something that attention never can. Peace. And after years of feeling out of place, misunderstood, and emotionally out of sync with the world, peace turned out to be what I was searching for all along.